So today we are driving to go watch the G.I.Joe animated movie from 35 years ago.
The best G.I. Joe movie so far.
Yes, which is kind of saying something because it's not what I would call great.
You need to redefine your great movies, Bob.
No, the Transformers animated movie is great. G.I. Joe animated movie was of a definite lesser.
Hey,
Like, I'll take Unicron over the Cobra Law people any day of the week.
Bobby, they fixed an issue that cropped up in Transformers, the animated movie, that didn't make millions of young kids scream out in agony.
I don't know about fixed.
They fixed it, okay? The snake to the heart doesn't kill people.
So, for those of you who have never seen it, by the way, there will be spoilers. You had 35 years to watch it. I don't care at this point.
If you really care about spoilers, pause us and go watch it.
Yes, it is. I believe it is on YouTube in its entirety. Legally, Hasbro has all the episodes of the cartoon, at least the first 2 seasons, while it was a different company took over afterwards. And I don't know if those seasons are up or not. I didn't easily find them, although I would think Hasbro would also own them since they own the company, but I don't know. Could be legal things there that I don't know about. Anyway, 2/3 of the way through the movie, one of the main characters,
Not
Duke.
2/3.
It's about 2/3 of the way through.
That was about halfway.
We'll time it here. So, Duke, who is probably as close as you come to the main character, since it's a team effort.
Yeah.
He is fighting Serpentor, who is the Cobra leader at that point in time. He is the product of genetic engineering, combining the DNA of all the greatest conquerors and warriors in history. And so he has 2 snakes up here on his shoulders, and he takes one of them, straightens it out like Thulsa Doom in the Conan movie, and then throws it at Duke, and it clearly pierces him right through the heart. Like, there's a splash of blood, it's clear where it hits him in the chest, everything. Someone even has to pull it out because it's embedded itself in there. Now, assuming that alone didn't pierce his heart, I'm sure the snake was venomous on top of that. So, Duke clearly was meant to die in this scene based on how everyone reacts in the movie. But they changed the dialogue because the Transformers animated movie was released first. Even though the G.I. Joe movie was done first, the Transformers movie was released first. In the Transformers movie, numerous well-known characters are just mercilessly mowed down.
You didn't give a spoiler warning for the Transformers, the animated movie.
It's even older. You had even more time to watch it.
And even more time to pause us and go watch it as well.
Yeah, it's probably also on YouTube. In fact, I know it is. So anyway, yeah, this falls under. If it's old enough to have come out whenever I was a kid, I don't care if I'm going to give you spoilers. So anyway, in that movie, the movie opens in like the first probably 10 minutes. Several Autobots get killed by the Decepticons.
Ironhide, Prowl,
Cliffjumper maybe?
Cliffjumper, Ratchet?
Maybe. But that's just the opening salvo. Because then about 20 minutes later, Optimus Prime and Megatron have their big knockdown.
You're overlooking where Optimus Prime mows down half of the named Decepticons by himself.
Yeah, but
I literally mean mows down because he runs them over.
Yeah, but he doesn't kill them.
It severely damages them.
They are severely damaged, but they're not killed.
Severely damaged is good enough.
Well, they're robots. You can just bank. As the movie later proves, no, that's not enough.
You just pump more energy into them and they transform into something else?
Kind of. So, Optimus Prime and Megatron basically have their big final knockdown, drag-out fight with probably the best dialogue for either of their characters ever.
Yeah.
And I do mean that. I believe both of their respective best lines ever are both in that confrontation.
I have to give it to them, yeah.
And I can't even hope to do their voices, so I'm not going to try to do it here. But anyway, just watch it. So, Optimus Prime is mortally wounded. Megatron is severely beaten. The Decepticons retreat. Optimus Prime passes on the matrix of leadership and then dies.
Where he turns all gray.
Yes, all the color leaves his body, just in case you thought he wasn't dead. He turns to black and white.
And the little beep machine
and the
that's
monitor.
hooked up to him, it flatlines.
Yeah, he totally flatlines. And a little kid cries. So, you know.
Millions of little kids cry.
Yes, in the theaters, I'm sure lots of kids cry at that point. But Hasbro needs to sell new toys, so old guys gotta die.
Yep.
So then, the Decepticons are flying through space back to Cybertron aboard a Decepticon, because that's the way these things work.
Yep.
And who basically tells them there's too much weight, and they have to jettison the weight, which doesn't make any sense, since they're in space and already underway. Weight is totally irrelevant. But anyway,
they needed an excuse
so they
to eject all the wounded Decepticons,
right,
including Megatron.
Right. So the Decepticons, being very Darwinistic, opt for survival of the fittest. So they shove out. It's all three of the Insecticons, and I think a couple of the Starscream clones, whose names I'll never remember. Like Ramjet and those guys.
Skywarp, Thundercracker.
Yeah. And then Megatron.
There's a female one in there, actually. In Starscream's clones.
Is that a new addition, or has it always been that way?
I don't know on that, honestly. We'll have to look into that.
So, because my nephew was watching one of the newer iterations, and I saw there was a female among the group there, but I didn't recall if there was previous to that, because that's kind of a big deal among the Transformers. Almost all of them present as male, which is bizarre because they're robots. And so, like, whenever RC first showed up, she's the, look at me, I'm very clearly female with my totally pink body that turns into a little sports car, girl voice, lips, obvious larger chest, which serves no purpose because she's a robot, but, you know, gotta make it clear. And then same thing later on in Beast Wars with Black Arachnia, only with minus the pink.
Was Elita 1 introduced before or after the movie?
Oh, I couldn't say. I still have yet to watch most of the series itself. I've mainly just watched the movie, then Beast Wars later on.
Because there is also Elita 1, who, according to lore, is like the partner of Orion Pax, who becomes Optimus Prime and stays as his partner when he's Optimus Prime. Like, it's weird.
Yeah. So, anyway, Megatron and the dudes that got dumped out into space get transformed by Unicron into different Decepticons. Mainly Megatron into Galvatron, and then Spock does his voice from then on.
Yep.
And,
old Spock, not new Spock.
Yes, to be clear, I do mean Leonard Nimoy, not Zachary Quinto. That's his name, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Depending on Zachary Quinto's age, might not even been born yet. But figured need to throw out that explanation in case you guys ever watch it, and from us are expecting Zachary Quinto.
Yes, we do mean Leonard Nimoy. By the way, that's another major difference between the two movies. There is a plethora of notable vocal talent in the Transformers animated movie that's not in the series.
Yep.
Among them, like I mentioned, Leonard Nimoy. You had Robert Stack as Ultra Magnus. The younger people in the crowd would probably recognize him from his role in the movie Airplane, or if you ever were to catch an old episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Eric Idle was Wreck-Gar. He's part of Monty Python. John Machida, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He did the voice of Blur. He used to, I believe, actually have the record as the fastest speaking man in the world. And he used to do commercials for Micro Machines. Talked very, very quickly. And
Who did Hot Rod?
Hot Rod was Judd Nelson. Who,
Yeah.
This being the early 80s, he was the big deal at the time. This would have been around the time of The Breakfast Club and, the other breakout movies like that. And then it was Orson Welles did the voice of Unicron. That was his final role. He actually died between recording it and the movie being released. And I know I'm going to forget somebody.
If you ever get the chance to watch the special features on the Transformers the movie release, do so. There are some interviews with the cast on there. Wonderful. They have some stories about Orson Welles.
Yeah, then on top of that, it got its own mostly metal soundtrack, plus a Weird Al song and a couple songs by Stan Bush, one of which was originally for the movie Cobra. We found out whenever we watched it in theaters a couple years ago.
Yeah, because it had an introduction by him.
Yeah, and it's a movie that, if you ever watch the movie Cobra, and then try to picture where on earth this song would go, my only assumption is it could have gone over the end credits, because it would not fit any place else in that movie, because it is a very dark movie.
In case you're wondering, the movie is The Touch, or the song is The Touch.
Yeah.
Go watch Cobra. It's an okay 80s action movie.
It's one of Canon's better knockoffs of better movies that they made. Cobra is their knockoff of Dirty Harry, I believe. Canon Pictures, that was like what they did. They had a bunch of money from somewhere. A couple guys from Israel, I believe, wanted to make movies, and they just signed whatever deals they could. So they made movies like that. The American Ninja series.
Those movies are great.
Masters of the Universe, the He-Man movie. Hey, the movie might have been not so great, but I still think Dolph Lundgren was good as He-Man.
He was.
And I think Frank Langella was pretty good as Skeletor.
He was. They are the highlight of that movie. But it is not a good movie, period.
No,
it is a guilty pleasure to watch it, in my opinion.
And I don't know the name of her. I don't know her name, but the woman who played Evil Lynn, I thought did a good job as well.
Yes, but it is a guilty movie. It is a guilty pleasure movie.
Yeah, other than that, not good. I watched the last 20 minutes of an HBO the other night. Wasn't pretty. Wasn't pretty. But
anyone who went into that movie expecting an actual Masters of the Universe movie, feel sorry for them. I went into it just expecting an action movie.
Yeah.
It sort of delivered on.
But yeah, so they also made, I believe, the fourth Superman movie, unless I'm mistaken.
Okay, we're getting a little off track here.
I know we are. That's
because our side note rambled off.
That's okay.
Because
we're fine.
We're on the G.I.Joe topic, man.
We'll get back to it.
No, we won't.
We're still back in the 80s. We'll get there. We'll get back to it eventually.
Our course correction is a little slow sometimes, Bobbie.
Don't worry, we'll get back to it. I just got to mention Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, the really bad Superman movie with Christopher Reeve.
Isn't that the one where... Is that the one where he throws all the nukes into the sun?
Yes, it is.
And he creates the nuclear clone of himself?
Well, Lex Luthor created him, yes.
Yes.
Nuclear Man. Yes. Like, Superman 3 was bad, Superman 4 is awful.
I'd rather watch Superman 3 where they make black kryptonite by adding tobacco kryptonite.
Oh, he made red kryptonite, actually.
What?
He made red kryptonite.
Oh, whatever color he made.
Yeah, red kryptonite's the one that makes Superman evil. That's what it was. But yeah, Superman 3 and 4, not good. Superman 1 and 2, I argue Superman 1 still holds up. Superman 2's decent. But Superman 1, still a good movie in my opinion. You just have to accept the fact it came out in the late 70s. So anyway, the Transformers movie had all these stars in it, Meanwhile, the G.I. Joe movie, it got Don Johnson as Lieutenant Falcon, who's Duke's brother, younger
Half-brother, something like that.
Yeah.
They at the very least have the same mother, I believe.
Yeah. And Burgess Meredith as Galopulus, the ruler of Cobra Law. Now, not to put down Burgess Meredith or Don Johnson, I suppose, but to say that it's kind of lopsided on the vocal talent there is an understatement. Now, the rest of the cast is basically the same, however, because almost everyone that worked on one of those cartoons worked on the other one as well.
Yeah.
And there's no like metal soundtrack. There's just some additional tracks they made that sound similar to the music from the show, in that same kind of vein, but clearly it's new music. But overall, just did not have the same level of fanfare and oomph behind it that the Transformers movie did. So, even though there's similarities to the plots, they both involve a heretofore unknown enemy who's going to basically destroy everything and show up. They both involve a younger character taking on the mantle of leadership, or at least the leadership position, because Falcon doesn't quite become a leader.
Falcon has very little redeemable or likable quantities. Quantities.
And Falcon is okay, but at least they didn't have a sidekick kid in there anywhere. So
you have a point there.
So they have that going for them.
Yeah. And at the last minute in the movie, you get a message that Duke survived. He's just in a coma.
Yeah. Since they had to change the dialogue about him dying, they also had to throw in the bit that he came out of the coma at the end of the movie.
So yeah, that's how they fixed the mistake Transformers made, apparently. Snake to the heart, probably venomous snake to the heart, coma, you're good.
But yeah, so among other things, this movie also ends with Cobra Commander being turned into a snake. Before this, he was merely a Cobra Law person, which maybe makes him a snake man. I'm not entirely certain on that.
He was a scientist for Cobra Law.
Right, but then he also had the spores happen, and like Galopulus is a snake man. Are they all snake men? I don't know.
The lady one has
Pythona.
Pythona has extendable venomous nails.
Oh yes, that's another thing to note. They also got a random, hey, we have more girls now moments, with Pythona being one of the enemies, raising the count of women on the enemy side to, I believe, 3, with the Baroness and Serana being the other 2.
Yeah.
Because I'm having a hard time thinking of who else it would be. Now, unlike the Transformers, however, the G.I. Joe team itself...
Are we including the alternate universe episodes as well for G.I. Joe?
No.
Because in those episodes, the Baroness had an army of female troopers.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are other Cobra soldiers that are women, because there's also that episode where the Baroness gets the conch, the seashell that lets her control all men, and somehow they have enough soldiers that aren't men to keep functioning. Plus, there's also, was it Mira? The woman that Dr. Mindbender experimented on and turned into like half dolphin that Shipwreck fell in love with.
Yeah.
I think it's Mira is her name. So there are female Cobra soldiers, just that kind of like how there's at least one episode that has one black Cobra soldier. It's just how they're typically depicted because they use the same artwork over and over. You don't see diversity among them, but whenever the episodes call for it, it is there.
Also, there was an episode where, to avoid drawing Cobra Troopers with varying facial features in an R&R facility, they all still wore their masks and helmets.
Maybe they had a COVID outbreak.
But they never worried about that with the Joes.
Yeah.
Because the green shirts all looked alike.
But, yeah, so unlike the Transformers, though, where the vast majority of them, like 99% of them are clearly male. Among the Joe forces, there are a number of female soldiers. In fact, both the cartoon and the comic book probably have probably still have the single most diverse teams you could imagine, with several people of color, several women, people from all different nationalities. I believe the modern books have 2 Native Americans in them, Spirit, and I can never remember the other guy's name. I want to say it's a Tracker, but yeah, and so there's considerable diversity, which, especially for the 80s, wasn't overly common.
No, it wasn't.
So it had that going for it, so it didn't have to go out of its way to be like, oh, look, there is a girl on the team, because there already were.
You got Starlet, Lady J, CoverGirl.
Yeah, and then among the new group, there's also Jinx.
Who is introduced in G.I. Joe, the movie that we are going to see.
Yeah. Yes, there is like the group of new recruits, as well as the younger guy who's not part of the group of new recruits, but ends up leading them in the big final battle, along with Slaughter's guys, if I recall the whole sequence correctly.
I believe so, yes.
So yeah, and then at least one of them, it's kind of funny. His name's Chuckles. Doesn't say a single thing in the entire movie, but like in the comic, he's known for basically never shutting up. And he does a bunch of undercover work.
Then you have Tunnel Rat introduced in this movie.
Yeah. He's
appearance-wise is based on Larry Hama.
Yes, who, for those of you that don't know, is the writer of the G.I. Joe comic book under Marvel. And when I say that, I mean all 155 issues. This is back whenever things like that actually happened in comics.
Then Big Lob was part of the ones introduced, I do believe.
Yeah, it's Big Lob, Tunnel Rat, Jinx, Chuckles,
Law and Order.
To be the other guy with the dog.
Yes, Law and Order is the history they give in the movie, or you can infer from the movie.
He's an
MP K9 officer who is being assigned to the Joes.
Yes, and that's an important thing to note for those of you that don't know the whole deal with the G.I. Joe team. They are supposed to be like the ultimate Special Forces team.
Who do not recruit just from Special Forces.
Yeah, I mean, Quick Kick was a movie star, and they recruited him.
Yeah. I think Big Lob
Lob's supposed to be a basketball player, So they'll recruit anyone that has the skills they need, but also their skills have to be incredibly broad. Because the way the cartoon always implies it, any one of them can jump into literally any vehicle they own and pilot it at an expert level. Doesn't matter if it's a boat, a jet,
submarine,
a dune
space
buggy.
shuttle.
Yeah, I mean,
you have your specialists in those fields, but their training is pretty much you have to be able to operate and use all these.
Yeah,
our bazooka guy just went down, whose name is Bazooka.
Yeah,
someone else needs to get that going.
Yeah, which...
Make sure you know which way to point it.
Yes, which occasionally leads to bizarre situations, like at least one that occurs in this movie coming up. You see, Cobra's forces also have, specialized infantry for various things. They're normal Cobra soldiers. Then, supposedly, the ones above them are what they call the Cobra Vipers. They're essentially their equivalent of the Marines. They're used to heavier combat, breaching, things like that. And then there's all kinds of specialists, like their Arctic troopers are called snow serpents. Their underwater troopers are called eels, who are recruited. I think the eels are recruited from among the snow serpents, or vice versa, because they both have to be super adapted to cold climates.
I believe their desert troops are desert vipers or something like that.
Well, there's desert vipers and there's also desert scorpions. And so anyway, the point is, and also a handful of them actually undergo surgical genetic modifications to be able to handle the extremes. But for this particular example, the point is they have specialist Arctic soldiers called snow serpents. However, in this movie, in the first big battle, which is in the mountains, in the snow, It's just a bunch of cobra vipers in fur coats. The only snow serpent you see is manning the tail gun on a vehicle as they're retreating. And that's probably why Cobra didn't win that battle. On the flip side, however, I'm pretty sure Dusty, the
is
desert
driving
specialist,
a snow vehicle, one of the snowcats.
Is also on the Joe's team up here. Now, depending on how much of a desert specialist he is, there's an argument to be made for him to be there because a number of snow-covered areas like Antarctica are technically deserts.
And deserts do get very cold at night.
Yeah, so there's an argument to be made, but it's clear that whenever they say Dusty's a desert specialist, by the way he's dressed and everything, they mean more like the Sahara and not Antarctica. So it's kind of funny seeing him there, in like what you expect to be the opposite. It would almost be as bad as if like Deep Six was there in his big robotic get-up suit, which I'm sure would protect him from the cold because it's for underwater. But it would just look ridiculous if he was just like on land with that thing for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
So,
although generally, like, he wears that thing everywhere he goes.
Yeah. So yeah, so you get a bunch of bizarre things like that. The cartoon was also known for the fact that basically no one ever dies in it. There's a very, very few exceptions to that, and they mostly came after the movie.
And yeah,
but so in the cartoon, like if they're in a dogfight in their jets or something, and one of them gets shot down, you can very clearly see the person bail out with a parachute,
and the enemy who shot him down not turn around to shoot him out of the chute.
Yeah, well, I think that's a violation of the Geneva Convention.
Cobra don't care about the Geneva Convention.
Well, once they have Cobra Island, they probably signed on to it. They were their own country at that point.
Good point.
I mean, I assume they would. I don't know. They might not. They're terrorists. I don't know. Might have to edit that out. I don't know if YouTube likes that word.
I don't think it does.
So yeah. That's just one of those things. And the cartoon, it's not just that it looks like they're using lasers.
They are.
A couple of the early episodes actually make it clear that they are using lasers. And that's really funny because the opening to this movie shows several characters sitting there firing the lasers like machine guns, and what appear to be cartridge casings come firing out of the side. And so I guess the implication is they're like batteries or something that charge the lasers, that each one's like a single use and then out they go, or it's the gas that gets ionized for the laser or something.
Yeah, probably something along those lines, which I don't know, I guess turns it more into a blaster than a laser.
Well, I think the real issue is that they didn't tell the people who animated the opening sequence that they're not normal firearms. And if I had to guess, I'd say that's the real thing. Because in the cartoon, in the comic book, they don't use lasers. They use bullets. With the exception of a handful of people that actually do use lasers, like the Laser Vipers and Sci-Fi, I believe, is the laser specialist for the Joe team.
Yeah, that would be Sci-Fi.
Yeah. Other than those, everyone else uses
High Tech is the computer expert. Breaker is comms expert. There's a space expert. I can never remember his name.
Oh, yeah. I got nothing on space expert. But yeah, so, basically, there's a definite level of silliness to the cartoon. It was aimed at kids.
It was aimed at selling toys to kids.
Yes, which, another little side note, for those of you who don't know history on this particular topic, if you notice, there was an explosion of such cartoons in the early 80s. That's because prior to that, it was illegal to make a cartoon that was basically a glorified TV commercial for toys for kids. So while you had cartoons before that, like all your Hanna-Barbera cartoons, like Scooby-Doo and the Smurfs and what have you, those were not vehicles to promote the the sale of toys, those were just their own programs for commercial success all on their own. Whereas the 80s saw the repeal of that law, and so you had the boom of like the G.I.Joe franchise, the Transformers franchise, the GoBots,
Centurions, Thundercats,
just a whole slew of properties, He-Man, ones like that the cartoon existed purely to sell the toys. Now, also, cartoons like the Flintstones and the Jetsons, adults watched those. They were considered, funny. They weren't just kids' cartoons. And so it was acceptable for adults to watch them, socially acceptable for adults to watch them. And so I believe that's part of why the first group of cartoons that began in the 80s and stayed through like maybe the early 90s, you could tell that they were written with the idea that, yes, they're for kids, but kids aren't idiots.
No, and adults are going to watch it with their kids more than likely.
Yeah, and so you have plot lines that, well, I wouldn't call them adult plot lines. They're the kind of plot lines you just would not expect to see in a kid's cartoon from, say, the last 15, 20 years, at least from the kids' cartoons I've had the misfortune of watching. Like in the G.I.Joe cartoon, there is more than one episode that addresses budgetary concerns for both G.I. Joe and Cobra.
Yeah.
The fact that the Joes have to answer to the Pentagon.
Yep.
The fact that the media is a thing.
Yep.
In fact, in the G.I. Joe cartoon, in at least 2 episodes, there is a guy who is clearly supposed to be a knockoff of Geraldo Rivera, who, he does like the Geraldo, back in the 80s, had a TV program, and he'd do like exposés, and had a big thing where he was going to open up Al Capone's secret vault, and they did, and they ended up there wasn't really much in there. It was a big build up to nothing. But he did a lot of like investigative, the government's wasting your money doing this and this and this, and trying to get answers kind of stuff. And so he has a version of him in the cartoon, whose name is completely escaping me at the moment. But like I said, he's in at least 2 episodes where he shows up at a Joe base and is basically trying to tell him, oh, there's no real